Welcome to Coldwater, a place where terrifying mysteries and ancient rituals have silently endured through generations. On Halloween night, the veil between the living and the dead is thinner than ever. And just one step could lead you into a dark realm where forgotten souls await someone brave enough to awaken them. In tonight's story, we'll uncover 10 mysterious rituals few dare to try. For they are more than just legends, they are warnings of horrors that cannot be escaped. Are you ready to face the mysteries of Halloween night? Make sure you're brave enough before diving into this eerie tale. Chapter 1. The Halloween Shadows. It all began on a quiet Halloween night when the wind from the northern hills swept through the winding streets of Coldwater. A town where darkness seemed thicker than usual. Coldwater was a peaceful place, but it held a secret nobody dared to mention. A silent shadow nestled among the old neighborhoods. As night fell, Coldwater looked like any other place. But Halloween always brought something strange. Maybe it was the wind, or perhaps it was the eerie silence. As if even the animals paused, afraid to encounter something only they could sense. Everyone was preparing for Halloween. Kids eagerly donned their costumes, from beautiful fairies to gruesome skeletons, roaming the town in search of candy. But behind their smiles and giggles, there seemed to be a silent warning. The adults didn't talk about it, but everyone knew Coldwater had its own Halloween tradition, one that no one dared to test, let alone mention. Secret rituals were kept under wraps, like whispered horror stories, each retelling adding a touch of mystique. As the night set in, a chill wind blew through the old houses. Windows were tightly shut, doors silently closed, as if no one wanted to invite the darkness in. But the story didn't end there. Curious souls like you and me are always drawn to forbidden things. Right? That's how these rituals survived, murmured from generation to generation, as warnings for the daring. The mystery of the 10 forgotten rituals. No one recalls exactly where these rituals came from. Some say they originated when this town was just a small village. A time when people believed in spirits roaming the fields and forests. Whether it's true or not, no one knows. But one thing is certain. Those who performed these rituals either disappeared or never spoke of them again. Ada, an old woman in the town, said that each ritual had its reason. When she was young, she heard that on Halloween night, these rituals could open a door to the other side, a place where the dead and the living could meet. But closing that door wasn't easy. Once opened, it demanded a price. Ada never specified what that price was, but everyone understood it wasn't something a sensible person would risk. That evening, as dark clouds gathered, I found myself sitting in an abandoned house on the town's edge. My hands gripped a candle, fingers trembling as the cold seeped into my bones. I couldn't recall who led me there or why I sat alone. But I felt like I was in the presence of something ancient and powerful. On the table lay a piece of aged paper, its shaky handwriting seeming rushed. If you are brave enough, try one of these rituals. But remember, once you start, there's no turning back. I read through the lines, almost in a trance, feeling as if someone were whispering in my ear, a soft but chilling murmur. Like a hidden blade in the dark. The Black Cat Summoning Ritual. On Halloween night, if you see a black cat wandering the streets, stay away, don't look into its eyes, or you might see something you wish you hadn't. For outsiders, this warning might sound ridiculous, but I'd seen what happened to Ted, an old friend from town. It's a story no one dares to repeat. That Halloween night, Ted saw a black cat on the street. For some reason, he decided to test this ritual, just to see what might happen. He slowly approached the cat and looked straight into its piercing green eyes. A gaze empty yet full of something powerful. After that night, Ted was never the same. He began talking about someone following him in the shadows, a dark figure flickering in and out of sight. They found Ted weeks later, collapsed in his room, a twisted smile on his face, staring blankly into the void. People say he saw something that took part of his soul forever. The Bloody Mirror Ritual. If you stand before a mirror at midnight, holding a candle, and call the name of a deceased person 3 times, they will appear, but never look into their eyes. Ada said this was one of the strongest rituals because it opened a direct doorway to the deceased. But once you see them, there's a price to pay. Jake, a young man new to town, heard about the ritual and decided to try it out. He stood in front of a mirror, candle in hand, whispering his long-gone grandmother's name 3 times. The candle flickered as if someone were blowing on it, and a faint shape appeared in the mirror. Jake's grandmother was there, but she wasn't the way he remembered. Her eyes were pitch black, and a twisted smile stretched across her pale face. He turned away in terror. But from then on, every time he looked into a mirror, he saw her reflection, watching with those dark, haunting eyes. I don't remember how long I sat there, reading each ritual with a mix of dread and curiosity. Each one left me feeling uneasy, as if I were stirring something best left untouched. But I couldn't stop. Each word on that paper seemed to have its own magic, pulling me deeper into my nightmare. But have you ever wondered? A voice echoed in my mind, faint and haunting. If spirits can really hear you calling them on Halloween night? Maybe you'll never know, unless you try. Chapter 2. The Summoning Rituals. Every Halloween, doors once locked seem to crack open, and it's believed that on this night, our world and the one beyond draw so close that a mere whisper can pull shadows from the realm of the dead. This Halloween night, I'm still in that abandoned house on the outskirts of Coldwater. The room is dimly lit by a flickering oil lamp. My fingers tremble as I turn the pages of the old, brittle paper. Each ritual, each word, feels like an invitation, but not the kind you'd want to accept. They're all trials, a twisted game with the devil. And here, I read the first 3 rituals, whispered to summon things no one would want to face. The Black Cat Summoning. On Halloween night, if you see a black cat, follow it for a short distance. If it leads you to a quiet street corner and stares into your eyes, shut them immediately and walk away. Never look too long into its eyes. There are things in that gaze no one should see. The story of Marjorie Carpenter has been passed down through the town for years. And whenever this ritual is mentioned, people remember her. Marjorie, an eccentric woman often seen wearing strange charms, claimed she could communicate with spirits through black cats. That Halloween night, neighbors heard her scream. When they found her, Marjorie was sitting frozen by the fireplace, her mouth open as if mid-scream, but her eyes were what truly terrified. People say her eyes were empty and as dark as the hollow sockets of a dead cat. Since that night, no one dared approach Marjorie's house, and the black cat ritual became one of the town's most disturbing legends. It's warned that if you stare into a black cat's eyes too long on Halloween night, you'll be haunted by the image forever. The worst part? Sometimes, you'll see your own reflection in those eyes, but it won't be you from this side of the world. It will be you from the land of the dead. The dark whispers. Sit alone under the Halloween moon, when the silence around you is absolute, and just listen. It's believed that if a spirit is watching you, you'll hear their whispers, but whatever you hear, don't respond. If you answer, they'll find you and never let go. The daring ones who sit under the Halloween moon claim to hear distant whispers from spirits. But the story of Jacob Walters is what truly chills anyone who considers trying this. Jacob was once a strong, lively young man. That Halloween night, he and his friends decided to sit in the cemetery, holding a candle as they tried this ritual. At first, it was just the wind and rustling leaves. But then Jacob began hearing a whisper. It was faint, almost inaudible, but it grew stronger, as though someone were standing right behind him, murmuring into his ear. In a moment of innocence, Jacob asked, "Who's there?" A cold wind rushed over them, and his friends said Jacob immediately shot to his feet, eyes wide with terror. After that night, Jacob was never the same. He often sat alone, whispering to the air as if speaking to someone no one else could see. He said a spirit had found him and would never leave. 1 year later, on Halloween night, he was found cold in the cemetery, his lips moving as though speaking to someone unseen. They say if you hear a whisper while alone on Halloween night, stay silent, because if you answer, that spirit will haunt you forever. The Ouija board ritual. If you want to know the secrets of the other side, try using a Ouija board on Halloween night. Place your hands on the planchette. Ask a simple question, but remember, don't ask anything you're not ready to hear the answer to. The Ouija board. Who hasn't heard of it? A popular spirit calling game, but also one of the most dangerous toys ever invented. Many believe the Ouija board is a doorway to the other side. A tool that, when misused, can unleash things no one wants. The story of Anna and Timothy is one of Coldwater's most frightening Ouija tales. They were just an ordinary couple until they decided to try spirit summoning on Halloween night. They went to Timothy's grandmother's old house, a vacant, eerie place near the edge of the woods, hoping for a spooky experience. They lit candles, casting a dim glow, and placed the Ouija board on the table. Anna and Timothy laid their fingers on the planchette, asking simple questions, but nothing happened. Then, a gentle breeze passed, the candle flickered, and the planchette began moving slowly, as if something were trying to communicate. Excited, Timothy asked, "Who are you?" The planchette paused, then spelled out BEYOND as though warning that something not of this world was in the room with them. Anna trembled but decided to ask, "What do you want?" The planchette moved suddenly, spelling RETURN. The room became so cold it nearly froze, and they felt something looming over them, a dark presence without form. Yet undeniably there, they never knew what it wanted. For once the door was opened, it couldn't be shut. Since that night, Anna and Timothy felt something watching them in the dark, a shadow lurking behind them whenever night fell. It's said that each Halloween night, they hear a knock at their door, but when they open it, only a chilling breeze enters, bringing a nameless horror into the room. I folded the paper, feeling a cold dread seep into my bones. These first 3 rituals were merely warnings, yet something drove me to want more, to dig deeper. Each story held a strange allure, like a dark secret I couldn't resist. Still sitting in the abandoned house, the faint glow from the oil lamp flickered, but the room seemed to grow darker. A gentle breeze swept through, stirring dust-covered furniture. For a moment, I thought I heard a whisper from the shadowed corner of the room. Maybe it was just my imagination. Chapter 3. Sacrifices and Curses. Sacrificial rituals and curses have existed since ancient times. Rituals that require an offering, a small gift from the living to the other side to unlock the mysteries. Only the truly brave or foolish would dare to try them. Unlike simple summoning games, these rituals demand a real price. I still sit in the abandoned house, the wind outside howling like the lament of wandering souls longing to reclaim a touch of the life they once knew. I glance at the faint words on the old paper, where the next ritual emerges like a whispered curse, as if a voice from beyond were calling back. The blood sacrifice. On Halloween night, if you want lifelong good fortune, offer a drop of blood to an ancient spirit by letting it fall onto a red maple leaf. But if the blood touches the ground, you will be haunted by nightmares forever. The tale of a girl named Sarah who tried this ritual has been passed down as a warning in town. Sarah, a young woman with ambitious eyes, believed deeply in the power of luck. One Halloween night, she heard that there was a simple ritual that could grant lifelong fortune, a drop of blood. Just one drop, and her wish would come true. Sarah chose a red maple leaf. Holding it carefully in the cold, dark night, she made a small cut on her finger, letting a drop of blood fall slowly. But just as it was about to touch the leaf, a sudden chill swept through, blowing the leaf from her hand. The drop of blood fell to the ground, soaking into the dark soil. And from that night on, a relentless nightmare began to haunt her. Every night, Sarah dreamed of being lost in a forest, chased by a shadow with burning red eyes. No matter how far she ran, the shadow was always right behind her. The dreams grew more horrifying until she no longer dared to close her eyes. On her last night, they found her collapsed on the floor, her eyes wide open, staring into the void as if seeing something beyond the world of the living. The price for a single drop of blood that went astray had drawn her into an endless nightmare. And since then, no one has dared to try this ritual again. The curse of the ghost fire. If you light a white candle at an old grave on Halloween night, you will see strange blue flames dancing around. These are the souls of the departed returning. But never extinguish the candle. Once the blue flames appear, the spirit will follow you forever. The curse of the ghost fire has been passed down as a way to communicate with forgotten spirits. They say that by lighting a white candle next to an old grave, you can witness the spirits of the departed dancing in blue flames. And if you are patient, you might even speak with them. But if the candle goes out, they will never forgive you. Tommy, a young man with endless curiosity, once decided to test this ritual. He chose the grave of an unnamed man, tucked away in the far corner of Coldwater Cemetery. The white candle flickered in the wind, and before long, eerie greenish-blue lights began to appear around the flame. Tommy felt a chill but was thrilled to see the faint figure of an old man with clouded eyes, staring straight at him. But then, the wind grew stronger, and the candle went out. That was when Tommy realized he had made a grave mistake. From that night on, he would constantly see the old man standing in the shadows, white eyes tracking his every step. He moved multiple times, but the figure followed, and the story ended with Tommy mysteriously disappearing. They say the spirit of the unnamed man took his life to punish him for disturbing his rest. The faded words on the old paper appear one by one in the dim light, each word like an everlasting curse. Sacrifices and curses, they always demand a steep price, and no one escapes once they've tried. Chapter 4. The Mirror and the Candle. Perhaps what chills me the most while reading these rituals isn't the threat they carry but the way they stir curiosity. I sit in the abandoned house, the pale glow of a candle casting eerie shadows across the room. The old paper in front of me still smells of mildew, and the next line on it feels like a whispered dare, as if a voice from beyond beckoning anyone brave enough to try. It leads me to the next ritual, a ritual where even the smallest mistake could open the doorway between the living and the dead. The Bloody Mirror Ritual. The Bloody Mirror Ritual. If you stand before a mirror at midnight on Halloween, holding a red candle and call the name of someone who has passed 3 times, their shadow will appear, but if you dare look into their eyes, you'll be trapped between 2 worlds forever. This ritual is not for the faint-hearted, and Jenny Stevens' story is proof of that. Jenny was a curious girl, fascinated by the supernatural. On the Halloween night of her 18th birthday, she decided to try this ritual in hopes of seeing her grandmother, someone she had never met but had heard died under mysterious circumstances. That night, Jenny stood before the family's large mirror, red candle in hand, staring at her reflection. She whispered her grandmother's name 3 times, each time quieter, as though afraid she might awaken something she couldn't handle. She felt the room temperature drop, the candle in her hand flickering, and then, a faint shadow appeared behind her in the mirror. It was a woman with long white hair draped over her shoulders and eyes dark as empty sockets. Jenny froze, her heart pounding. The shadow moved closer to her in the reflection, raising a hand as if reaching for her. Jenny remembered the warning not to look into the eyes of the dead. But curiosity made her glance up. Those black eyes stared back at her, pulling her into a shadowy world. After that night, her family never saw Jenny again. The Stevens family removed the mirror, but it's said that anyone who looks into that mirror on Halloween night can still see the figure of a girl, forever trapped between worlds, lost in the realm of the dead. The Burning Wish Ritual. On Halloween night, write a wish on a piece of white paper, then burn it under the moonlight. If the flame burns bright red, your wish will come true. But if it turns blue, know that your soul has been traded for that wish. This ritual sounds simple enough, but the story of a young man named Mark makes everyone think twice before trying it. Mark was ambitious, but failures plagued his life. On one Halloween night, he decided to use this ritual to change his life, hoping that a wish would finally give him what he desired. Mark wrote a single wish on the paper, one thing he longed for: success and wealth. He stood under the cold moonlight, lighting the paper with a candle, watching closely as it began to burn. At first, the flame burned warm yellow, but then it suddenly shifted to an eerie blue. Mark panicked, trying to put it out, but it burned completely, leaving a thin trail of blue smoke in the air. After that, Mark's life began to change. He found success and wealth, just as he had wished, but he always felt an emptiness, a creeping fear surrounding him. Each night, he dreamed of a shadowy figure passing by, whispering words he couldn't understand. Exactly 1 year later, Mark was found in his home, slumped over a pile of money, his eyes wide open as if he'd seen something terrifying. They say Mark's wish was granted, but the price was his soul, a price only the boldest would dare to pay. The Candle Calling Ritual. On Halloween night, if you call the name of a deceased loved one 3 times in a dark room, they will hear and appear, but once they come, they won't want to leave. To avoid being haunted, never blow out the candle after they appear. The Carlson family was well known in town, and they once attempted this ritual in hopes of speaking to their deceased mother. This story spread through town as a cautionary tale that no one wanted to repeat. That night, they gathered in the dark living room, the only light coming from a flickering candle. The father, John Carlson, called out his wife's name, a woman who had passed away from illness years before. Silence hung heavy in the air, stretching unbearably long, and then suddenly, the candle flared up, and a faint shape of the woman appeared in the light. At first, the Carlsons were overjoyed, but when the father tried to reach for his wife's hand, she vanished into thin air. In that instant, a cold wind blew through, and the candle went out. From that night on, the Carlson family was never at peace. They constantly felt a cold presence lingering in their home, as if someone were watching. The lights would flicker, doors would open and close on their own, and the scent of the mother's perfume would fill the air. The end of the story came on another Halloween night when the father tried the ritual once more, hoping to send his wife's spirit back. But the candle never went out, and that shadow still lingers, seemingly bound to this world forever. I fold the paper, a heavy feeling settling over me as if I'd awakened something that shouldn't have been disturbed. Rituals involving mirrors and candlelight have always held a strange allure, as if a single glance or a single call is enough to pull spirits from the other side. The darkness in the room seems deeper, and I feel as if something is lurking in the shadows, watching me through the dusty mirror. Perhaps these rituals are not just stories but warnings from the dead to anyone daring enough to meddle with the other side. I swallow hard, snuff out the candle in front of me, and stare into the darkness. Chapter 5. The Dance of Death. Every Halloween ritual tells a story steeped in the supernatural, as spirits from the other side try to find their way back, awakening the deepest fears in the living. But one ritual carries a different essence, a ritual that merges life and death in a strange dance between two worlds. This is the Dance of Death, where the living and spirits join in a surreal dance, and anyone who has dared to try it has never been the same. Dancing with the shadows. Stand under the moonlight on Halloween night, wear a mask, and begin to dance, inviting the spirits to join. When you hear footsteps echo from nowhere, do not stop. If you do, they will pull you away forever. The story of the Dance of Death is more than just a tale. Many in Coldwater believe that this ritual is real, a haunting tradition avoided as if merely speaking its name could awaken ghosts from past Halloweens. Ada, who's lived in Coldwater for many years, once shared a memory of Halloween from her youth, when her best friend Eleanor decided to try this ritual. Eleanor had a daring curiosity, and that night, she donned a black silk mask and stepped out onto a moonlit field. Ada vividly remembers Eleanor's first steps, light and graceful, as if she were performing her own private show in the dark. She began her dance naturally, but then a breeze picked up, rustling dry leaves across the ground. Ada recalled watching from afar, noticing an eerie sound, footsteps that did not belong to Eleanor echoing from the shadows. Eleanor kept dancing, but her steps grew faster as if she were no longer in control. Her face was hidden behind the mask, her eyes glowing under the moonlight. Ada called out to her, urging her to come back, but Eleanor didn't respond, or perhaps, by then, she couldn't hear. The footsteps multiplied, as though invisible figures surrounded Eleanor, sweeping her into an endless dance. The next morning, Ada found Eleanor's mask abandoned in the field, but Eleanor herself was gone, never to return. They say that on Halloween night, anyone who dares to dance under the moon with that mask will see Eleanor's shadow dancing eternally. Trapped between the worlds of the living and the dead, caught in a dance with no escape, the spirits dare. On Halloween night, enter an abandoned house, stand alone in the dark, and call the name of the dead 3 times. When you hear a reply, stay silent, but if you're too weak to resist turning around, you'll be pulled into the darkness forever. The tale of the spirit's dare originates from an abandoned house on the outskirts of Coldwater. That house has stood empty and cold through many Halloweens, like a ghost lingering in the shadows. It's said that anyone brave enough to stand alone in the house on Halloween and call the name of the dead will hear a spirit respond. A spirit that will bind itself to anyone who dares to call its name. The story of Luke Miller is among the most famous spirits dare tales. Luke, a young man passionate about investigating the supernatural, decided to try the ritual to see if it was true. That Halloween night, he entered the abandoned house alone, his footsteps heavy, his mind tense, clutching his flashlight tightly. The house was pitch dark. The floorboards creaked under his steps as if they too were alive. He stood in the middle of an empty room, surrounded by thick darkness. Trying to steady himself, Luke took a deep breath and called out the name of a dead person, his grandfather, who had passed away long ago. At first, nothing happened, just the echo of his own voice in the empty house. But when Luke called a second time, he heard a faint whisper from the distance. It was faint, unclear, as though it came from the depths of another world. He steadied himself and called his grandfather's name a third time. A cold wind swept through, and the room darkened further. He felt a presence behind him, breathing quietly, as if someone were standing right behind him, watching him. Luke tried to stay calm, determined not to turn around as warned. But his curiosity overpowered his fear. He turned back. No one was there. He sighed in relief, thinking the ritual was nothing more than an urban legend. But from that night on, he always felt someone watching him, no matter where he went. Sometimes he heard slow footsteps behind him, or felt a breath against his neck in the dark. Luke left Coldwater, but nothing changed. The shadow continued to haunt him as if a piece of his soul had been left in that house forever. The night grows deeper, and the abandoned house I'm sitting in seems colder too. The words on the old paper have led me through terrifying stories of those who dared to perform these rituals. Something stirs in my mind, as if these rituals themselves are calling out to me. Suddenly, I hear a soft sound outside, slow, steady footsteps. A chill runs down my spine, and I try to tell myself it's just the wind. But then, a faint whisper echoes from somewhere in the darkness. I dare not turn around. Chapter 6. The Final Warning. Halloween night blankets Coldwater in a dense shroud, concealing things untouched by daylight. The abandoned house I sit in seems to feel it, too. The faint light from the candle flickers over the old paper before me, where the words of each ritual I've heard about lie waiting, each one a haunting tale, a hazy warning from the other side. Those who dared to try these rituals, they never came back. Curiosity, the price they paid, whispers from the darkness, and the piercing gazes that seemed to drain your soul. Every single one of them was drawn into a place no one wants to reach. The final warning on the paper is chillingly clear. If you've read this far, you've stepped into a doorway with no way back. These rituals are more than mere stories. They are fragments of memory from those who lived, who died, and then were forgotten. It's said that anyone who attempts these rituals is no longer the same. Coldwater remembers some names well, as if keeping a list of those whose souls the darkness has claimed. Ada, the elderly woman who has spent her life in town, watched as countless friends ventured into these sinister games, only to vanish. She was the one who told the tales of Eleanor and Luke, and those names have left scars on Coldwater's memory that may never heal. Some simply disappear without a trace, like Eleanor in the Dance of Death. Others come back with horrific tales, their eyes glazed as though living in two worlds, like Luke after the Spirit's Dare ritual. And there are still stories untold, about those who paid dearly to enter the realm of shadows. The question remains, who among us will be next? The people of Coldwater know these rituals are not games, nor just legends shared around a fire. Halloween night isn't a time to tempt fate, it's a night to survive and pray. A night to hope you won't become prey to the darkness. But there is one final plea within this tale. The warning on the paper I'm holding says that everyone who's tried the rituals has left a part of their soul bound to them, so that the next person who follows in their footsteps can sense their shadows, hear their breaths. It's said that if you speak your own name aloud at exactly midnight on Halloween, in front of a burning candle, your own ghost will gaze back at you from the other side. If you look into its eyes, you will see everything you fear most, and your soul will be pulled into the darkness forever, joining the forgotten ghosts of Coldwater. I don't know if I'll ever dare try these rituals, but on that Halloween night, as I left the abandoned house, I heard footsteps trailing me, and chilling whispers carried on the wind. Coldwater, a town that once seemed peaceful, will never be the same, and its tales of horror will continue, like scars left behind by Halloween itself. And there you have it, the 10 mysterious rituals of Coldwater. Rituals no one dares to speak of, yet they linger silently in the shadows, waiting for those curious enough to step into the world beyond. Halloween is not just a night for harmless pranks and playful scares. It's a time when spirits and forgotten ghosts return to reclaim what was lost. So tonight, are you brave enough to try one? Or will you spend your Halloween in safety, knowing that some things are better left undisturbed? Comment below which ritual gave you the chills. And don't forget to stay tuned for more horror stories next Halloween. Until then, see you in your nightmares.